The biggest one is that periods are supposed to be painful. Like the whole idea about period pain, which I remember while I was in nursing school, I actually asked this to one of my professors because we were talking about pain and pain receptors in the body. And the purpose of pain in bodies is to indicate that there's something wrong. Like, okay, if you twist your ankle, like you're going to have pain because you hurt something and it means stop doing what you're doing and get off of it or whatever. And we've normalized menstrual pain so much that it's not only like women in their experience, but the healthcare industry has minimized it. So now doctors don't really know, or I don't think there's any malice in it, but I don't think they take a lot of complaints of pain seriously enough. And that's why it takes 8 to 10 years for the average woman to get diagnosed with endometriosis. I mean, it's absolutely infuriating to me.
Welcome back to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects every woman, yet is rarely taught in a way that truly helps us to understand our bodies. It's menstrual awareness and its connection to fertility. For many women, the menstrual cycle is seen simply as a monthly inconvenience or a sign that pregnancy hasn't occurred. But our cycles are so much more than that, and they provide valuable insights into our hormonal health, emotional well-being, reproductive function, and overall vitality. When we learn to understand and work with our cycles, we gain powerful information that can help us optimize our health, improve fertility outcomes, and develop a deeper sense of self-trust and connection with our bodies. In today's episode, we're exploring how menstrual awareness can support fertility, why cycle literacy matters, and how we can empower the next generation of girls and women to better understand their bodies from an early age. This is an insightful and empowering conversation that I know you're going to love. So let's jump in. Hello, and welcome to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have Corey Ray Kovacs, who is a registered nurse, a women's health educator, and host of the Phoenix Perspective podcast. Her mission is to help mothers raise vibrant daughters who grow up with confidence, self-worth, and body autonomy. Through her work, Corey explores menstrual health, feminine wisdom, emotional resilience, and cyclical living to help moms and girls navigate life with greater connection, self-trust, and joy. Welcome, Corey.
Hey, thank you. So glad to be here.
Yeah, so excited to have you here. So, look, tell me what made you get into nursing for a start, and then why women's health now?
Originally, I went into nursing because I wanted to become a midwife. After going through all the challenges of trying to conceive with my daughter, and then she ended up being breached, so I ended up having a C-section because there wasn't anybody that could deliver her vaginally. And it really lit a fire in me to want to advocate for women and to kind of help support the maternity care system, which quite frankly feels broken. And so I started down the path of midwifery and decided to go the certified nurse midwifery route and went to nursing school. And that's where I got started. And so after I graduated from nursing school, I kind of decided to take a little bit of a different route. I haven't been working in the maternity side at this time, but I'm working more kind of in the women's health arena and educating. And so I feel like it's always just like a winding road.
Yeah.
And where life takes us is, there's also life circumstances. And the pandemic happened while I was in school.
Yeah.
So it just kind of takes us where our passions go. And I think my own personal story has also reflected in my work as well. But maybe someday I'll be a midwife.
Will you be open to sharing a personal story?
Yeah, from a women's health perspective, like I always struggled with my health and particularly like my reproductive health. I had really irregular cycles, growing up, and then I joined the military and they, put me on birth control because that's what they do. And I spent an entire decade on birth control, not knowing that I actually had a condition. And I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome when I was 27, when I was trying to get pregnant. I come off the pill and didn't have a cycle for,
Yeah.
almost a year. And they're like, well, there might actually be something amiss here. And so, and I still didn't even get all the answers that I needed even through that. Of course, I was able to go through the fertility pipeline and managed to conceive. I had one child, and my daughter Asen, she's 12 now. But yeah, I didn't know how to care for myself or my health until almost a decade later when, after I graduated nursing school and started to really, my health had taken a turn in my late 30s and needed to take care of myself a little bit better. So started understanding and learning a little bit more about PCOS. And then that kind of lit a fire under my butt to share and help people understand. And once I got to understand my cycle a little bit more, and then I started teaching it and sharing what I was learning, and it just really turned into this beautiful passion um, of helping women to understand their cycles, helping mom to understand cycles, so they can help advocate for their daughters. And I don't know, I think it just has come full circle, and I continue to explore where that goes and where that takes me as I continue to learn and grow myself, for sure.
Why is it that women and like in general, we are learning about menstrual cycles like late 20s, early 30s, and that's only if we've
Mhm.
got irregular cycles? Like, shouldn't menstrual awareness be taught a lot sooner? Like, it should be
Yeah.
taught in basically primary school, even because at
Mhm.
preteens is actually anyone's getting their menstrual cycles from, as young as 8 or 9 now,
Right.
right? And it's like,
Yeah.
if we're not teaching women or teaching young girls actually between, anywhere between sort of 10 to teenage years. I mean, coming to our late 20s, and look, it's the same, like as a fertility health practitioner and, fertility coach, it's like these women have no idea about their cycles until
Yeah.
they're trying to conceive. Why do you think
Yeah.
that is?
Wow. One word, patriarchy. Um,
That's true.
but no, it is. We've kind of grown up in a society where the predominant experience is held through a masculine perspective.
Yeah.
And when we've designed our society around that experience. And because of that, we've minimized the other part of it. And the thing is that our cycles, I believe, I mean, this is a deep belief of mine, is that our cycles are inherently like our internal rhythms and our internal patterns. And when we understand what those rhythms and patterns are, then we're able to live a more coherent life that feels more vibrant and aligned with our unique energy that ebbs and flows, week to week. And the challenge is that there's a lot of religious implications. We've kind of downplayed sex, downplayed, this kind of education. And especially when it comes to women's bodies, women's bodies have been hypersexualized. And I mean, we could kind of go all around in this area because so many times menstrual cycles are attached to, menstrual cycles of puberty are attached to, sexualization of women. And so it ends up being taboo, or it ends up being just like something that we don't talk about. And then the issue is that we are growing up and not understanding, or just like very minimally, oh, it's just something that we have to manage, have to deal with. It's just, a part of it. And we don't really get to know who we are or how our bodies actually function. And so I think it really does us a disservice to not understand that. And being able to get that education either in the home, I would love to see it in our schools as well, more than just like, you can get pregnant all the time, which is complete
No,
BS.
that's
But,
true.
we end up getting scared into it, all of it. And that's really doing, girls and women a disservice, and boys too. I mean, they need to be
Yeah.
understanding this stuff as well. I think the more that we talk about it. Yeah.
And I think it's twofold as well. Like, a lot of the teenagers, once they sort of come into their menarche, and then it's either two things. One, they start having really painful periods, or two, it's
Mhm.
contraception, right, as a
Yeah.
teenager. And so then they go on birth control, right? And then before you know it, they're on
Mm.
it for 10, 20 years, right? And
Mhm.
then they're coming off thinking, oh, I'm going to be fine once you come with a pill. But that's like, that's not the case, right? And
Yeah.
for many women, or And it's so hard because there's no that education. You're just taking contraceptive for decades. We don't want to get pregnant when we're younger. And then when we do want to get pregnant, it's not happening. And so our bodies are
Yeah.
like, what's happening, right? We're so desperate to
Right.
get pregnant when we're in our later years, but when we're spent like decades, doing the opposite, like avoiding pregnancy, it's a
Mhm.
misinformation to the body. The body's like, what's going on?
Right. I like to think of that pathway, like reproduction is not just our ovaries, it's our ovaries and our brain and our entire, there's so many pieces to it, and if you block that communication, which is exactly what hormonal birth control is doing, is blocking the communication between your ovaries and your brain. And if you do that for years and years on end, then those pathways of basically grown over in grass. Like I like to think of it as like a highway that basically hasn't been
Yeah.
driven forever and nature has taken it back over. And so it takes time to reestablish that. I know I was one of those women. I
Mhm.
thought I was going to come off of birth control and get pregnant. Like my mom
Yep.
would get pregnant. She like could look at my stepdad and get pregnant. Like
What?
I mean, she's just I didn't know that I was going to have problems, and I think so many of us like assume that we'll be fine because
Yes.
doctors tend to tell us that it's safe, it doesn't affect your fertility,
Yeah.
and I think it's more complex than that. A lot of women go on birth control because they're having irregular periods, which could indicate an underlying condition, like in my case, it's so many other women who are
Mm.
coming off. And then once you remove that birth control, now those problems that were there are still there. And so it can be kind of a challenge with the mind. But the more education we have, I think the better that goes.
Yeah, I think that's some of the biggest myths and misconceptions, really. I mean, surrounding periods, it's like we can get pregnant whenever we want. And obviously, people going through, and like you said, it is going on these birth control or whatever other reasons are going on it to manage the symptoms. But then again, if you want to be a mom some point in your life, then all those symptoms are going to come back at a later point because you haven't dealt with them earlier on, right? And so, what other myths and misconceptions have you sort of come across in your sort of
Ooh, I
education?
mean, the biggest one is that periods are supposed to be painful. Like the
Yes.
whole idea about period pain, which I remember while I was in nursing school, I actually asked this to one of my professors because we were talking about pain and pain receptors in the body. And the purpose of pain in bodies is to indicate that there's something wrong. Like, okay, if you twist your ankle, like you're going to have pain because you hurt something and it
Mhm.
means stop doing what you're doing and get, get off of it or whatever. And we've normalized menstrual pain so much that it's not only like women in their experience, but the healthcare industry has minimized it. So now doctors don't really know, or I don't think there's any malice in it, but I don't think they take a lot of complaints of pain seriously enough. And that's why it takes 8 to 10 years for the average woman to get diagnosed with endometriosis. I mean, it's absolutely infuriating to me. And so one of the big pieces I do, and I actually even created a pain scale that's specifically for period pain. And I'm still kind of like working on it, but when I give those to women and I educate them and they're like, oh my gosh, actually what I thought was, when they ask me what my pain is and I'm saying it's a 4, it's really like a 7 or an 8. And from a healthcare perspective, like that matters in how we're treating women. And so I think even just that, like so much of my work is talking about the normalization of period pain and understanding the difference between what is expected of mild discomfort and things like that to actual pain that could indicate that there's something wrong and your body's trying to communicate to you that she needs attention.
I mean, yeah, it's the same as like even in Chinese medicine, we look at
Yeah.
diagnoses very differently, right? It's like, is
Hmm.
this stress? Is this like your blood is stagnant, right? Do you not have enough like iron deficiency? Like there are so many diagnoses, right? And it's looking at the whole person and individualizing it. And that's the thing, like when people aren't being recognized for the pain, and I've heard of so many stories where the doctors go, it's normal, especially the men. Look,
Hmm.
it's hard because they don't go through this month by month. I
Right.
think women
Yeah.
doctors are a bit more understanding, right? But however, going through that and thinking it is fine, either the birth control or just go and deal with it, it's really hard, right? And it's like
Hmm.
looking at what the diagnosis is, and then looking at perhaps alternative therapies or more natural diet and lifestyle, which doctors don't go into. I mean, look, you're in Australia, you're seeing a doctor for 10 minutes. We don't have time to go into a whole history, what you're eating, what you're doing. And half of them don't believe in diet and lifestyle, which is hugely important because, sugar and all that's all inflammation. But like you were
Absolutely.
saying, like a women's menstrual cycle is really their report card, right? It's like what
Yes.
is happening with each week. We sort of split them up into the 4 weeks, right? The 4 different weeks of the technically, sort of textbook 28-day cycle. It's like four weeks. And it is a report card, right? And it's like, well, what is that signifying your overall health is like?
Yeah, the emphasis that that is a communication process, like that is your real-time indicator of your overall health, and it's not just about the period too, it's about the ovulation because that's the main event, right? That is the entire reason why we have this cycle. It's just we don't think about it that way. We think a period is, but that's really the end result of not, getting pregnant during an ovulatory cycle. And so helping to understand not just the quality or the length or the timing of your period, but also the timing of ovulation and when you're kind of in that fertile window and understanding, are you actually ovulating? These are such important key features that every woman should be able to look and see and know and understand what her body is doing. And it's most I find that there's a lot of women who don't even know when their last period was
Yeah.
without having to look it up. And it's not their fault. It's just we're not taught this stuff. We're not taught that that's important to understand what's going on with our bodies. And so I think the more of us, that can keep having these conversations, that's going to improve not only the quality of our lives, but also improve our chances of fertility if we are, wanting to conceive or start a family. That's a vitally important is to understand your entire cycle, not just what's going on with your period.
And I think it starts way earlier. Like you said, it really should be starting, if we've got daughters, it should be starting when they basically start their periods, right? What we can explain. And it's coming to the education of moms as well, right? But if they're not educated, then educating in schools. But it's like, it's so important that menstrual health and for them to understand that their menstrual health will influence their fertility outcomes later in life.
Hmm.
We're going to be parents, even not, but just long term reproductive health as well,
Yeah.
because that will flow into so many things post menopause, but it's this entire every decade of menstrual health is different, right? If you're getting your periods in your teenage years, it's different for managing things in your 20s, 30s, 40s. It's like all these different decades really should be looking at what is your menstrual health doing and what is your fertility and reproductive outcomes going to be if that's what you're moving towards. And it's just not enough education for sure. And I think just even educating women in general so that they can educate their daughters.
Hmm.
And so many
It's
people don't understand.
yeah. Absolutely. It's absolutely vital, like the piece of being able to understand what our bodies are doing and then teaching our children and passing that information on, especially if, for those of us who came from homes where that wasn't the norm, where it was taboo to talk about our cycles or if you're getting later in the years, like you said, all these different seasons. Like I'm in my 40s now, so I'm heading into perimenopause years. And, that wasn't something that was talked about. And I know that there's so many of us that are entering into all of these different phases and don't understand that, well, what was normal for us in our 20s is not necessarily going to be normal for us in our 30s or our 40s or our 50s or beyond. So understanding our bodies is really like the first step, and then being able to pass that information on and to our children is also important because that sets them up for a better quality of life and better, fertility life in the future as well.
And I think, look, it's a lot easier nowadays, obviously, with like, internet and with like, chat and AI and all of that. Like, there's no excuse for people not to understand their
Mm,
cycles more than, say 20 years ago. There is so much. I mean, I think that's the opposite too. I talk to clients and they're like, I'm so confused. There's too much information now. Right? They've got the opposite. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to
Yeah.
take. They're so conflicted because one person will say
Mm,
one thing, someone else will say another thing, and they're like, I have no
mhm.
idea what to do because now they're in information overload as well. So we went from having no information to now too much information, which
Yeah.
is which is confusing for many
Mhm.
people. But let's talk about cycle tracking. How have you felt that cycle tracking? And I know that the importance of cycle tracking, it doesn't matter, even if you are not, trying to conceive, that it's so important to understand the regularity of your period cycle and to really understand how to track your cycles. Like you said, some people don't even know when their last cycle was. Some people are getting 2, 3 cycles a year. And it is just, and they just put it aside. They go, oh, yeah, we'll deal with that at some point.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
it's until they're trying to conceive, they're like, "Oh, whoops, we should have, probably dealt with this a little while ago."
Yep. The tracking piece is I I think it's essential, and there's various amounts of tracking. There's various, like, levels, I call them, like, different levels of tracking, and we all choose to track for different reasons. Some of it's just planning for, knowing when our period is coming up, so we know to have products available, and some women are interested in or trying to conceive, and then so your tracking might get a little bit more involved. You might start tracking your symptoms day to day, start looking at your cervical mucus and tracking your basal body temperature, and when those periods are coming, so it gets a little bit more involved. And then even there's even deeper layers in that, and something that I do, which is more for like personal growth as well as health, and a kind of a deeper spiritual connection as well, because many women find a deeper connection to self through cycle tracking and menstrual cycle awareness. And so there's various levels that you can go through and various ways to do it. I'm a paper girl. I use this is what I use. It's called a
Mm,
cycle a cycles journal.
wow.
um
Even got
and
a
it's a
picture of that's that a picture of a uterus at the front?
well, it's yeah, it's
Kinda looks
yeah,
like.
like all of her artwork that she does is it's always like a uterus, but it's
It's
done with
beautiful.
flowers, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
But, so you can do it old school and do it on paper. You can use apps. Then there's so many options to track nowadays, but really it's important to understand what your purpose is of tracking. Like if you're trying to conceive, you're going to need to know a little bit more than just when your period comes. If you're monitoring your health, then it might be a good idea to know, are you ovulating regularly? And so you might need just a little bit more information. And if you want to get deeper into it, I think there's always a depth that you can go with tracking. But I, quite frankly, can't see any downsides to it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Think more
there's,
people should, and right, it's earlier. The earlier you do it, the better, right? It doesn't have to be crazy, but you do have to know when your periods are, and if you're getting all the symptoms, like write them down. Like if something's not normal, or if something is, used to getting it every month, it's like tracking the normal and the irregular things. Like you have to know all the symptoms, like even headaches, like all the PMS symptoms as well. Like all of that needs to be noted down.
yeah, because oftentimes those are connected to stressors or lifestyle things or sensitivities that we're unaware of, stress for sure. And, those are again they're signals. It's a communication process between us and our body, and the more that we pay attention to that and know if it's coming cyclically, then there's something connected to us, and it's asking for our attention. So the more that we can understand that and track that, then the more awareness and the more we can do something about it.
Yeah, like I said, it's as early as we can, right? And I think it's raising awareness. Let's go back to talking about the importance of mothers. Like, have you had the conversation with your daughter? Yeah, probably have. How did that start, right? How did we start having the conversation? Sort of pre-teens, I think now.
Mhm.
And how can mothers, like, if you've got a young daughter,
Yeah.
like, how did you start chatting to her about her periods?
Yeah. I think I kinda giggle a little bit because if you asked Asen, I even just overheard a conversation the other day. She was talking with her friend, and she's like, "My mom is a menstrual educator. I know all the things." And it's so cute. It's so cute. But
Yeah.
the so I think everybody in my house hears about it daily because I am very open about where I'm at in my cycle, what's going on. And so I think it's not it, yes, of course, like it is important to bring this conversation up. And I think sometimes we make it big
Mhm.
when actually it's more of a way of living, or
Yeah.
us normalizing it in a conversation that creates normalization in the home. And so for example, I have a crown that I wear. I have like a rose crown that I wear when I'm on my bleed. And it's something that helps me feel good, like it's like an acknowledgement that I'm on my cycle. But also, it's actually very practical because it lets the entire house know that I'm slowing down, that I'm not going to be at everybody's beck and call. I'm not going to be up doing all of the things. And, you know, what this has done for Asen, and my daughter is like, it's helped her to see, oh, when we're on our cycle, we slow down, we
Mm.
care for ourselves. And it's built this into her. So now she's almost at that space where we're close. And she's going to be able to integrate those things and that self care for her. And of course, yeah, we have all of these conversations. I think it's like an open conversation that we have. And so I think the more that you as a mother normalize the experience of bleeding, of having a period, of having cycles, then the more that becomes normalized in the home. And so it doesn't end up being this like whole big old huge conversation. It ends up being kind of like an ongoing space where questions can be asked and we can talk about these experiences. And of course, those things might become a little bit more pointed once we are there, talking about period products and things like that. But she knows that I use period underwear.
Yes.
She's like
They do
been
ask,
around.
right? They're very
Right,
observant.
they
My
do.
daughter, they're
Yeah,
like,
and they're curious.
what's these pads?" Like, they look like
Yeah.
nappies, or they'll be like, "Why are you wearing nappies, Mommy?" Like, things
Mhm.
like that, right? And it's like, they're just
Yeah.
curious. It's like
Yeah.
they're seeing things, right? Or they're seeing
Mhm.
bleeding, or they're seeing whatever it is, and it
Yeah.
is about having those conversations about, what to expect, because otherwise
Yeah.
it comes with a surprise. Like, I think in my
Yes.
generation, we didn't get that, and there wasn't much education in school, so when we got it,
Yeah.
it was like a huge surprise, and you can't talk to there's a lot of cultures where you can't talk about this with your parents.
Absolutely.
And
Mhm.
so being open, I think, in this day and age is so much more like, there's a beautiful thing about being able to converse in a way, and if not, you can point them in the right direction to read or do so many things and then come to you if there's any further questions. But I think that also leads into the whole sex education piece as well, right? So
Yes.
once you start
Mhm.
talking about periods, then you can go into a lot of the sex ed
Yeah.
with them, and then they can understand cycles and all of that. So it is just education
Mhm.
for them, and the more educated they are, the better they're gonna be with their own bodies and
Yeah.
understanding their own health for
Yeah.
sure.
And the
And it
normalization
yes.
of that education, and that's the piece that's really important that I emphasize to moms when they talk to me about. I just talked to a mom this weekend about it, and I was like, the more comfortable we feel with ourselves and the processes that we're doing, then the more comfortable they feel to ask those questions and to be more comfortable with themselves. So it's not so scary. So it's not so stark or startling because it can be. I mean, it's a big moment in a girl's life. So the
I
more
think it's
supportive we
something
can
yeah, it's
normalize.
helping them view their cycles as more of a strength, like, this is going to be strength rather than something that is really embarrassing or super inconvenient, right? Like, people are like, "I used to remember hating every time I got my periods," but then
I
now
did too.
people are like, they love if you have really regular cycles, I have clients dancing or sending me dancing emojis. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
my period came on day 28,"
I
and
know.
they're doing a happy dance or,
Yeah,
some sort of and then, like, when you're younger, you're like, "Oh, I don't want my periods to come because it's an inconvenience," right? But if they understand the beauty of why we have, our moon cycles and it's supposed to be something beautiful, it's such a different way of looking at something, which isn't always pleasant.
which is so deeply connected to our experience, right? Like I kind of what I was saying at the beginning of the episode is that we we experience life cyclically as women. Like every month we're bleeding, every month we go through, and even in the seasons of our life, we go through menarche and motherhood or our creative space and the perimenopause and the postmenopause. Like our lives are lived through cycles. And so when we bring acceptance and compassion and grace into that space for ourselves, then that also brings about acceptance in other places about our body, about the way our bodies look or how they move or how they feel and that really helps also with the body image challenge that we have as well. It's multifaceted, so it's not just about periods.
No, it's such a positive, like, impact on their own mental health, right? And how they're supposed to view all of that. And that really leads to them, like I said, their future and reproductive health. The more educated they are, they're not going to have all these problems that I'm running into with people in, the preconception phase, because they would have been looking at all of this way earlier, which is the problem. I think there's so much now they're dealing with a lot of that now when they should be actually having beautiful cycles, being able to conceive easily and effortlessly. But it is a struggle. It is a real struggle. And because most of this wasn't, spoken about or dealt with way earlier than it should have been. And I think there's that beautiful, really that beautiful outlook if, you can have that positive conversation with other women and even with friends, and it's still not a huge conversation, even with some, like, it depends on the girlfriends, but it's not something people talk about openly, right?
Yeah.
That's
Unless you're
true.
my friend,
Oh, yeah.
then like my friends know the very first thing I'm gonna ask them when I talk to them is like, "Where are you
Where are
at in
you
your
in your
cycle?" Like
cycle?
they know that by now. And on my podcast, I do the same thing with my guests. Like it's literally the first thing I ask because
Yeah.
I think because it is a frame of reference for our experience. I'm in my ovulation window right now. I'm showing up very differently than I would
Yes,
if it
exactly.
was
Yeah.
right, if I was on day 27. Like I know that I'm a different person in that space, and I wanna understand the women that I'm relating to, like, "Where are you at? Oh, girl, you're on day 2? Alright, come here. Let's get some
And you'll all
chocolate
be
and
in
go sit
sync, right?
down."
And then all your
Yeah.
girlfriends are close to you. Like, I
Yep,
remember my sister and I used to be in sync growing up, right? It's
yep,
like,
mine
it
too.
just becomes you just become cycle buddies. You're like, "Oh, yeah, we're both going through the same thing," because
Yep,
your cycle starts syncing, like, with
yep.
the people around you. It's hilarious,
Mhm,
how
mhm.
how things turn out, but it is all about that body autonomy and really realizing that, yeah, it's understanding, like, yeah, and actually a really important point is, like, people should slow down around their cycles, but a lot of the time we don't, and we are still doing the same thing we're doing, towards the end of our cycle or even during our menstrual bleed, which is so important. So let's talk a little bit about what are the different things people should be doing at different phases, because they're not slowing down. People are not realizing every week is different.
Mhm. Gosh, this is one of the biggest things that I've noticed when I start working with clients, the changes in how they experience their periods, because oftentimes I'm working with women who have painful periods, and when we start talking about their activity levels, especially in their premenstrual, those few days before their bleed and then during their bleed, when we start talking about their activity levels, what they're doing, and I'm like, are you slowing down? Or, no, I keep going until I crash, basically. And or until a headache, knocks me out, or the pain is just so bad I can't do anything. And it's that period of time right before our bleed is so crucial to be slowing down, and not only for our hormone levels, like, progesterone really is a sensitive hormone. She's kind of sensitive to stress, and I like to think of her as like a deer in the woods. She's kind of skittish, and if stress her out or freak her out, or you're really pushing hard, she's not going to show up. And progesterone is that part of us that keeps us feeling calm, keeps us, our pregnancies being able to sustain. It's super vital that we have that hormone and are nourishing it. But when we keep pushing and we keep striving during that last part of our cycle, it can really affect the part of us. So I find, like, if women just start paying attention once they start tracking their cycle, and they're like, okay, I'm coming up in that last week before my period. I need to start wrapping things up and maybe doing some food preps, go into the grocery store before my period, and making sure meals are taken care of, and just giving us also a little bit more space. So that way when we come into our bleed, we're not like completely crashing and burning every single month. And that can make such a huge difference. So I think there's lots of different things, and there's so many resources out there about cycle syncing, or how to best, care for your hormones and your different phases. But I think if a woman was to listen to this episode and like take one takeaway from that, it's like just slow down those few days before your period, And you'll start to see some improvements if you are having painful periods, if you are having headaches, especially at that time. You'll start to see some improvements in that, and it'll start kind of rippling out to the other phases as well positively.
And I think it's learning to work with your cycle rather than against it, right? I mean, it's really understanding, okay, what do I need to do with each? And that comes with tracking as well. But like I said, we're so go, go, go all the time. And then that's
Mhm.
why they have the pain as well, because the stress levels, like it causes in Chinese medicine, causes the blood to thicken and we become more stagnant because we aren't slowing down, allowing that flow and just allowing your body to really just, yeah, be in flow really. And just, yeah, nourishing and just doing quietening down the body for those few
Mhm.
days. Like I won't go to the gym hard. I won't hit the gym. I'll do a lot more during our, ovulation phase, which is when our body loves to be energized and do all those things. But yes, exactly. When we're having our bleed, it's really just taking care of ourselves like we haven't done for the rest of the cycle.
Absolutely.
What are some practical ways that families really can then, really be aware? Like I said, you kind of wear your crown, but just some of the other things that, might help like the rest of people because, you hear people going, oh, they're so emotional during their periods and things like that.
Mhm.
But I think that's a really lovely way of allowing the family just understand, look, yeah, you're going to be slowing down and really just taking a step back. Hopefully people around the family can step up a little bit more and support women in that sort of, yeah, in the sort of phases, but throughout the rest of the times as well.
Mhm. I feel like when we start to understand our cycles and we start prioritizing our care from a cyclical perspective, then it naturally starts kind of permeating in the house because most of us are the ones who are running our social calendar. We're running the calendars of the activities in the home. And so, for example, like I don't schedule big outings with my kid 2 days before my period. Like, I know better because I know I'm not gonna be able to show up as the mom that I want to.
Mhm.
I know that I'm gonna be probably tired. Now, if there's obligations or meetings or things like that that I need to do, that's different, but I we have so much more control over our schedules than we realize, and so when we start paying attention to that, we start to set the pace for the home, and again, it's like being open and connecting. Like I talk to my partner quite a bit about where I'm at in my cycle. And so now he understands because I've been doing this for, I've been living this kind of cyclical living for about 5 years now. So we're kind of at that point where we know and he knows.
Yeah.
And he'll even say something. He's like, "Oh, you're kind of flirty today," or you're in your follicular phase, aren't you?
Yeah.
And he'll say stuff like that,
He
right?
even uses all the terms right.
'Cause he just knows. Oh, and he does. But, I mean, not everybody's gonna do that, I get
Right.
that, but it is just like this understanding that we are expressing ourselves in different ways. We get to speak to our families about our experience and just say, "Hey, like, I might be a little sensitive today. This is a more sensitive day for me. I have a day, usually like day 7 or day 8 for me, and I call it my baby bunny day. And it's a day when I feel really tender and I'm really sensitive. And so my family knows, like, and I'll tell them, it's like, oh, I'm feeling like a baby bunny did today. And that's an invitation for them to bring compassion, and it's interesting too because they also feel like they can be open with the rest of the family, say, "I'm feeling really sensitive today." Asen will say that. My daughter will say that even though she's not cycling. She's like,
Mm.
"I'm feeling sensitive today."
Yeah.
And that allows me to show up for her in a way with compassion because I can relate to that. I know what that feels like. And, even my partner too. So we are kind of these emotional leaders in our home, and we get to set the pace, set the tone. And when we do that through a cyclical lens, now everybody gets to kind of have the full range of the human experience in a safe space within the home. And that's
That's so beautiful because
powerful.
you're really supporting that emotional resilience, self-trust, and also, really having that nourishing, like I said, leadership, but also showing that, yeah, if you're the parent, right, and you're being this leader, and then she's like, oh, yeah, I know what to expect as well. So that's so special for, having daughters because we are such emotional beings. We're so much more emotional than the men, right? Because of our cycles, right? We're going through a lot of ups and downs, and it's having them have that awareness and going, yeah, okay, I'm going to be a bit more understanding, a bit more supportive
Mhm.
during this
And
time.
I actually think it actually opens up them to explore their emotions more too. And it's an unexpected consequence of me doing cyclical living is that I've noticed that it's given permission to everybody to be expressive with their emotions and to work through them in a healthy way rather than shove them down or push them aside or be passive aggressive or hurtful towards each other. Now we get to have more healthy conversations because we are able to build that resilience within ourselves. And I think it goes deeper than just, tracking our cycles. Like now we're talking about building emotional intelligence and not just for us, but for the men in our life, for our sons, for our daughters, for, the other people and that are close in our circles. Because it's we're allowing and giving permission to experience the full gambit of our emotional experience because we do feel differently throughout the whole cycle. And so, so many men have grown up only having very limited access because the world has told them that it's not okay for them to experience certain emotions. And so when you start to give yourself permission to do that, it also gives them space to do it too. And it's beautiful to see. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really, yeah, that's a beautiful thing. So, what are some three things? What would you say are three simple things that every woman can start doing today to be more cycle aware?
Well, I think the first is just start tracking, like
Yeah.
start paying attention to what your experience is on a daily basis. Some basic things is your energy levels and, your physical signs. So get to know what that would be another thing is like get to know what's going on down there, right? Like know what your cervical mucus is doing, know what your bleed looks like just be curious about it. Come, like, look at it, note it, get like a scientist. I know so many of us like loved science when we were kids. It's like so think of it as an experiment. Think of it as a curiosity. It's like, what is my body doing today? What is she telling me today? And so really get curious. So tracking is such a huge piece of that. I would say another thing that she can do is to start exploring what her relationship is with her cycle. I know that's kind of a little bit more on the emotional side, but I think it's especially important for those of us that are on a fertility journey that are maybe trying to conceive. It's like, what is our relationship with our body? What is our relationship with our cycle? How do we feel about that piece? And get into some journaling a little bit, get into some like self-reflection. I know that's something I wish I had done before I had went on my fertility journey was start to address those challenges with my body and shame and all of those things. So get into some like self-awareness work, and certainly it was very, very helpful there. And the last thing I would say is just be more open about it. Like, don't, especially like with your partner, just like start talking about your experience. And the more you normalize it, then that it might be kind of odd at first, but the more you practice speaking about your cycle or speaking about your experience, then the easier it gets. And then you might find that there's a lot more support, a lot more understanding there when you let, kind of bring yourself with vulnerability and let that other person into your world. And it's a beautiful thing. So those are all 590 frees, free ways and easy ways to kind of start. Maybe not easy, simple ways, I would say, but it's not easy. It's not easy because oftentimes you get into this work and you're dismantling things that might have been kind of there for a long time, but it is worth it. It is worth it for sure.
That's so beautiful. And I guess lastly, what is one thing you wish every mother and daughter understood about menstrual health and fertility? We've
Mm,
covered so many, but what would be the most important piece, do you think?
mm. That it can be a very beautiful place for them to bond.
Yes.
It's it can be a beautiful place. Oh my gosh, I just got chills. There's so many things that we have in having daughters, and so many opportunities we have to break generational patterns and cycles, and especially the negativity around our bodies, and so when you start learning about your body and then sharing that with her and coming together in this, space, and when she starts cycling and you're cycling, like now you have this commonality that you haven't ever had before. So it really can deepen your relationship and whatever that means for you and for her. So it's a beautiful space of bonding that can come around when you bring a space of openness and vulnerability. Then it's beautiful things can unfold, and that's yeah, I think that's one of the most impactful things that you can do as a mom.
That's so beautiful and so lovely. Like, we could talk so much about menstrual
I know.
cycles, but you shared such beautiful little conversational pieces and so many things just to be aware of. And I think it's just starting and having that awareness is the number
Mhm.
one piece for sure. But
Yeah,
thank you so much for being on, Corey. And I hope the listeners took away some beautiful stories and yeah, just steps that they can start doing for themselves and for their daughters if they've got them. So thank you so
absolutely.
much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode on menstrual awareness and fertility. This conversation is a powerful reminder that our cycles are not just about reproduction. They're a vital sign of our health, a source of information, and an opportunity to develop a deeper relationship with ourselves. To everyone listening, if this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend, sister, or daughter, or anyone that could benefit from understanding their body on a deeper level. Until next time, take care of your health, honor your hormones, and remember that your body is always communicating with you. It's simply a matter of learning how to listen. We'll see you in the next episode.